Okay, hi everyone. So welcome to Indigo. Hello, aloha. Uh, so this is technically the last work week. It's not the last call. We would still have kind of violet white integration call in December just to close the 1 year where the feedbacks would be gathered as to how you're taking all these in as we also end the year. Um, it's quite an interesting thing for me to be right now closing the 1 year, closing the 10 days of Maya, closing the 3 months that we also have been holding separately. So in my own brain, I have a 3 month curriculum, a 10 day, and a 12-month curriculum, like a 1 year. And it's all like jumbled together, all these parts and wholes that are speaking to each other. It's so much more messier, but it's so much clearer what 2024 has been holding leading into 2025. Um, so I'm really humbled and honored and like in awe and amazed. And Indigo is a very deep space. It's not always easy to hold because there are so many possible representations. So let's just get into it. Really do want to spend this careful time looking at the colors. Um, okay, so let's just go to the color quick. Hope you're all well. Like we can just do the check-in, check out. Uh, when we're going into the Q&A and the dialogue. All right. Um, when I look at the Indigo map, this is kind of old for me. What I would love to just share later on would probably be my own reading lists make a lot more sense as we try to look at the wikis. So I would just maybe share my my wiki map later on, which is really what I use to do prep work for each color. That might be useful. This is more um, telling of what goes into maybe holding curricular space. So doing like right now 10 days, this is what I would look into like next year, which is a more complete mapping. So I'd be happy to maybe map these out. Um, I really do suggest that you do a Wikipedia mapping of your own if you are holding training space or facilitation space. It would be interesting for you to do that. So I have a PowerPoint here uh, that I prepared, and we can just go over this to maybe meditate on what is indigo for us, right? So let's just go into it. I'd love to go into the topic of resonance. I'm sharing my screen, yeah? Let me know if I'm not at least so embarrassed if I'm actually not. Let's go into the word resonance. What does it mean to go into an indigo resonance, both in the mind and the body, particularly in terms of cognitive resonance? I think this would hold the big indigo, the third eye space, fairly. What does it mean to see things in resonance? Um, so there's a whole slew of possible topics that can go into this. Now, I bring this up particularly where the principle of indigo would be pattern emerges out of chaos. Now, how we would have these principles per color. Patterns are in the chaos. So as we mess things up, the more we basically would see So what is insight anyway? Like, how do we build an insight? How do we construct a deep understanding of the world and people, situations in the world? Um, so I'm going to be bringing up maybe some familiar topics and some new things that haven't been discussed before within the 12 month anyway. Um, so let me uh, put up looking at the notebook now. All right, so um, chaos theory is interesting in inner dance, particularly as chaos theory brings about an understanding of how synchronization happens. And we've gone quite a bit into the neurosciences as to how brain waves are synchronized even within the inner dance process. When we achieve what we call REM state consciousness, there's this idea of cross frequency coupling, how maybe theta gamma helps to gate uh, high gamma. I mean, slow theta waves would help to hold the faster waves. So we've spoken quite a bit about cross frequency coupling, which achieves that thing in the playlist, you know, like the slow and the fast, where we create all the waves in between. So that's actually one of the first calls already. Um, I want to look at within Indigo because in Indigo, there's a lot of necessary psychology that needs to be figured out. So, wait, this psychology. There needs to be some psychology within Indigo, but I think what we'd be interested in how does the neuroscience and the energy process contribute to a psychology that would be whole systems, that would be integrated. What we've been doing in the current training, trying to I don't like repeating myself. So when I do trainings, I like to be more and more coherent every time we keep going into these things. So um, we're going a lot into the meeting point between insight and valuation. Valuation as a mapping process. So one way to go about this is we would value the things that seem important. So for example, music seems to exhibit these changes or transformations in the brain. So when we take up the study of music, whether it be music theory, music production, and the brain sciences, the endocrine system, the autonomic nervous system, the circadian rhythms, to arrive within an indigo epistemology, which should be a theory of knowledge about a particular thing that we value. So let's say we have gone quite a bit into ontology, the philosophy or theory of being. A lot of people would enter this through, let's say, the Kundalini. And then when we go deeper, we would go into a host of other concepts. If we valued music, let's say, okay, I value music, music is important. Understanding the brain, which is undergoing changes, this is important. To arrive at justified true understanding, which is epistemology, we would need to substantiate what is it in music that actually holds like a lot of power. So we would need to understand the meeting point between music and the brain. So there would be a whole laddering process. There would be a whole journey, a whole mapping as to say when we open the Wikipedia elements. Uh, all these things would be interesting. Um, in a way, it just keeps extending and expanding. The more you study the brain, the more you study music, um, like what you're valuing, just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. So I think any training, any immersion, any exploration has to be a kind of adventure and a journey that takes us deeper. So it could be like discussing this in a day. Like in Maya right now, we're discussing it in 10 days. Uh, as we value, then the understanding just keeps coming. So when we study the apps, it's quite silly to bring up apps on, let's say, like here in my iPad, we would be talking about apps in the training. This is a new app that we're very interested in, primarily because when the new Noise app came out, there are limitations in it compared to the old version, which would limit the people that we would be sharing the energy process to. Maybe you have the app, but other people can't have the old version of the app. So right now we're considering even better ways to conduct the inner dance. And for people to learn these apps, there needs to be some trainings involved because there's some interesting complexity there that would actually help in the grounding of people within energy states. We're going to be covering this app maybe more in the next call. I'd like to just go over the theory today to more or less value weight music in the brain, and then we would make this practical as we go along. Okay, so having said that, let's just keep going. Right. So cognitive dissonance, I feel, is the gateway to resonance. Before we tackle what is resonance, either cognitive or embodied, resonance in the mind, resonance in the body. And sometimes it is easier to find resonance in the body. It's so much more complex to achieve resonance of the mind because of just how complex our belief structures are. Let's look first at what is cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is a psychological theory that observes that when we have cognates or cognitions, things that we believe in that have inconsistency and discomfort, that we don't like that. And there's something in us that tries to change our attitudes, thoughts, or behaviors in order to restore consistency. Okay. Basically, we don't like to have inconsistencies between what we know and what we're doing, what we're experiencing, and what our habits are. So let's map that out. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological theory coined or constructed by a psychologist named Leon Festinger in the 1960s. Sorry, the 1950s. And I think there's a lot here to hold. I feel that we are more so today exposed to so much information. People are in cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a form of hiding. It's a form of hiding. It occurs when, let's say, here's a cognate or a cognition. Let's give an example. Let's say one of my favorite examples culturally in the Philippines is people are born into Christianity or Catholicism. And we believe in the principles of Christianity, that you have to be kind, you have to be good to other people. In the Philippines, we would observe, for example, that Christians, for example, even the priests, the nuns, when they don't act in ways that are kind, when they are unkind, say when priests are involved in like sexual misconduct or their own judgments, when there's like a inconsistency, that would result in some kind of discomfort. And when people experience that, then there would be a reaction, like in the mind and in the body. So a response mechanism to cognitive dissonance would either be uh, people would lie to themselves, or they would modify or justify one of the beliefs. It could be either this one or this one, so that there would be not the incongruence. There would be some kind of justification that makes us equal, even though there is uh, the inconsistency that is actually quite obvious. They need to hide that. They could like add certain other beliefs that would justify things more. So, for example, here's one. Like when people are smoking, and let's say when people are exposed to childhood stimulus, could be like documentaries that you watched in school early on that smoking is bad. And so let's say you're here your lungs, and if you're smoking, your lungs would be black. But then people are anyway like still in the activity or the action of smoking. So when people are experiencing both, like let's say I'm a smoker and I know that smoking is very, very bad for me. What addition would be is, okay, I am praying anyway to God, or I'm doing yoga, or I'm trying to eat like a healthy food. So adding all these would justify it's okay to smoke. Sorry, it's okay to smoke, even though there's the badness of smoking. That something is justifying. So human minds and bodies are kind of filled with these cognitive dissonances. Like this is just these are examples, like the Christianity or some kind of religion versus the fact that the people who run those religions aren't exactly acting out the principles. Even like let's say our parents teach us to be kind, and then when we unkind to other people, the child especially has to cope, has to find a way to arrange belief structures in a way that's not really affected by that inconsistency. So basically, that's um, cognitive dissonance. And one of the um, observations or manifestations of cognitive dissonance is when people are over rationalizing, when you can hear people over explaining themselves to other people in a way that's actually unnecessary. When they're over explaining, that's a sign that some kind of cognitive dissonance is at work. Um, so basically, people don't like discomfort, people don't like pain. And what that leads to is people would sweep the dirt, say, underneath the rug. So if it's underneath the rug or the carpet, you don't see it, then you don't feel it, then it's not there, even though like somewhere underneath there's actually like a lot of dirt, but um, we're able to hide it. So this would be particularly interesting because when you have like energy process, it could be inner dance, it could be like Reiki, it could be Kundalini activation. When inner dance or the spiritual modalities used to hide the discomfort underneath the feelings of, say, bliss. Oh, I feel good, I don't have to think about the problems anyway. um, People would still have to go back to life where they still have to deal with like all of this like shit storm, like the dirt. So we want to be careful that the inner dance that we are holding, the spiritual modality, whatever you call it, that we're holding doesn't hide. So we have to be open that when people are feeling pain, when people are feeling discomfort, uh, someone sent me a voice, no, a message yesterday asking, what do you tell a participant who was experiencing like a head pain, like after or during the inner dance process, there's some kind of pain, and because they're not maybe used to it, maybe what they're looking for, expecting is bliss. They kind of wonder. And my standard explanation, without meaning to go into specifics, is that's actually a form of healing. Sometimes the discomfort and the pain is a manifestation of healing. And because more often than not, it's usually the opposite. Like people come in with pain and then the bliss would come after. But what would happen if they were actually feeling blissful when they walked in and then suddenly they feel pain? Um, my categorical answer is that an even deeper healing is possibly happening. So sit with it. Something wants to be seen, something wants to be looked at. Okay, so in past calls, we've gone over the fear avoidance model. And if you remember, this was by Robert Lethem. It helps us to understand cognitive dissonance from a body-based model. Okay, so this is not so much a cognitive dissonance. This is maybe more of a embodied dissonance. And to arrive at resonance, there has to be an ability to go into a no fear state, and then an observation of what's in the body can lead to an actual recovery. So yes, this would be a model more of embodied resonance. And we try to match this up with what a cognitive resonance would look like. So they're more or less the same thing on different dimensions. Uh, okay, so would bring up this book again that was written in 2013 between a doctor and a healer. Just not just a book, it was a movement. And there were really interesting things in that movement that we can keep going back to. The doctor and the healer, namely Dr. Rami and Pai, wanted to find out what is actually healing and why is it that some people heal and some people do not. Um, and then there's a whole story there that led to this one insight, this very painful statement that can be spoken. It can be great for some people. Like the moment we want to heal is the moment we don't. This is a very, very cutting statement within the inner dance process. And it would take us quite a while to hope to understand what does that actually mean. Like the more we want is the moment we don't. I think facilitators are dealing with this. Like what the moment of wanting is the moment of not having, primarily because uh, the energy of wanting proves the fact that you believe that you don't have it yet. It's not inside you. And the process of trying to have it proves the fact that you don't believe. You know, you're holding the vibration of not having through the vibration of wanting. They're both they're synonymous with each other. So many facilitators get stuck with this. It's very easy as a starting point to try to people please. And that's primarily because a lot of the fundamental techniques in the work that we do is reward driven, neurologically, energetically, dopaminergically, because we are releasing these neurotransmitters and chemistries that provide reward. The facilitator and the participant themselves are perpetually inundated in this loop. So one of the effects of that is outcome will overpower the process. The end will dominate the means. It's going to be ever about what do I get out of this? I suppose, it's the destination and not the journey. And that always leads to a process of trying to hurry things. I think primarily, especially the monetary exchange, the money system, the money part of this, when people give the facilitator money, all the more we will be into the people pleasing, the reward and the outcome as that which orientates the process. When someone gives money over the expectation that, you know, you are supposed to fix my problem, that is the point. So the thing of wanting versus having is really rooted in the problem solving mindset, problem solving mindset that um, is the overall agenda of most activity on Earth for human beings. The pleasure seeking, pain avoidance system. Um, the yeah, okay, going deeper into this, the formulation that we want to understand and to work out is okay, here you have cognitive dissonance. And I basically got introduced to cognitive dissonance when I was studying marketing in college, as way back as, you know, before the year 2000. So this is more than 24 years ago. I've been looking at the term, what is cognitive dissonance? Cognitive dissonance is a psychological theory, but it's very much used in marketing. So it's actually a tool for propaganda and marketing. Even in elections, this is very, very usable. So cognitive dissonance, if it's usable as a program for manipulation, the formula is basically very, very simple. It's more or less to present a problem. So for example, if it's in marketing, we present that there's something we need to solve. So for example, if your product would be toothpaste, if it would be shampoo, if it would be deodorant, if it is a particular food or a beauty product, the problem could be anything from, let's say, acne, dandruff, which has underlying problems within them. It could be like you're not popular, you don't have any friends, you're not successful, and so on and so forth. Very conveniently, a solution would come up at the end of an ad. Okay, there would be a solution. It could be, oh, you're going to be beautiful, you're going to have more friends, you're going to be more successful. So a lot of really big companies got big. They got that way because of cognitive dissonance, because people don't like these dissonant experiences. Then it's very easy to grab the colored pieces of paper in people's pockets, or those numbers in people's bank accounts, because if there's an amplification of a perceived problem, you know, like no one loves me, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not perfect, then if the energy work will give you more power, more money, more status, that you can be a healer, you can be like amazing, you can be so much more, then that's why people are paying huge amounts of money for trainings. So even within the spiritual industry, there could be a lot of cognitive dissonance at work. Cognitive dissonance could still be a tool for creating band-aid solutions that don't heal the problems at the core. We might accidentally maybe glimpse on, you know, the source, the the depth of the soul. But when the marketing, when the framing of inner dance or Kundalini activation and whatnot isn't really aware of the deep underlying problem in problem solving, then it might still be bringing people into a place of wanting and not having, because the people are constantly still pretty much stuck with attending the workshop as many times as possible within like a month or a week, it means that people aren't actually solving the problems. When people are problem solving, when people believe that there is a problem to be solved, so let's say there's a belief that there is a problem, the fact that there's a problem that it needs solving, that means that you believe that the problem is there to begin with. Uh, Sometimes in the energy process, such as in inner dance, people go deep. What happens to the problem? When we go beyond the belief, when we in fact like transcend the belief, especially like a limiting belief, what happens is the problem doesn't really get solved. When we take steps back and observe and just go into the energy, not to energize the problem, but just to go into the energy, the problem actually dissolves. Instead of solving it, it just goes away because the problem was in fact an illusion. It was a judgment. It could have also been an emotion. Uh, the problem wasn't actually there. We were just putting it there through our perception itself. That's why energy unto itself works on its own in a basic or simple way. Later on, it won't work in that basic way when we do go back to our thinking process, which will never go away because thinking is a form of traveling through time and space. If you stop thinking, then you would really just be a baby or like a universe that doesn't need to unravel through stories and time. You know, you don't need to be here anymore on Earth. So problem solving is like something born out of the third dimension. We designed the brain, in fact, to solve problems. Problem belongs to determinism. It belongs to linearity. To go outside of problem solving means just to go beyond the linear space. So we want to understand this. And I believe that the one of the best theories to help people understand just how stuck they are is called this one. It's called the double bind theory. And this one was given to us by a man named Gregory Bateson. 2 weeks ago, within the blue, we brought up cybernetics. So I think this is one of the most useful theories to come out of cybernetics. And basically, this is what it says. We enter into a dilemma in which an individual or a group receives two or more reciprocally conflicting messages. All right, so this can happen a lot in the energy process. In fact, when we listen to people in the work that we do, when we like look at these situations where healers do not come out of like integrity in the work that they do. Let's say, okay, someone is supposed to be coming from pure light, coming from source, you know, the master, the guru, the healer is supposed to be like a person who is good, who should be good to their partners, to their children, to other people. They should be kind, they should be patient, they should be available. They should actually also be wise. They should have resonant answers to questions that would arise. They should be that. But then when there's a question on integrity, so no one is perfect. I am by no means perfect unto myself. At, by no means are you supposed to be perfect. But when there is the standard, the super high standard set upon us, that this is what is supposed to be happen. This is a form of double bind. This is a form of double bind. Like human beings could never be perfect unto themselves. And so when we put the standard that we believe that people who are coming from light should be this and should be this and so on and so forth. But then when we see that they are not that, in that scenario, there would be this emotional distress. Because here's a situation where a successful response to, let's say, this one message, say, okay, healer should be this. But the moment you see that the healer is not being that, there is a double bind there. So in order to get away from that or to go beyond that, there has to be a um, a belief that transcends this double bind, and a lot of people are unable to get to that point. So let me give you an example. Like within this one example, in order to maybe heal the double bind here, then we would realize that there is this aspect of the wounded healer. That the wounded healer is in fact authentically someone who can help others all the more because they would have the empathy through their imperfection, that they don't always need to be perfect. They don't always need to be in integrity. That is a form of goodness and wisdom. So that's just one example. But like in life, there are many situations where people are definitely stuck because the moment they try to like address like one side of things, it's a win-lose, because the moment you take one side, there's always these dualisms at work, and this more or less leads to a form of schizophrenia. A lot of people are sort of uh, schizo, uh, and a lot of people also are known to experience post-traumatic stress disorder. Like that situation is more or less, to Gregory Bateson, rooted in the double bind. Um, so a lot of people are basically subject to control, subject to they get enslaved by masters. They enter into cultic situations by blindly entering into some kind of double bind. Um, which is a form of cognitive dissonance. So, in the hope that people don't experience the conflict, they tend to then hide a lot of the truths that they see aren't matching because they are unable to find um, something beyond the contradiction. So, I think that, like, I would love for you to keep looking deeper into the double bind theory and to look at the examples put out by Gregory Bateson, some of the cybernetics who worked with him, and beyond that, how people have taken uh, this theory and schizophrenia on distress in a way that would apply to the work that we do. All right, so I want to bring up the idea of the pharmakon or the pharmakos as something super relevant within philosophy that describes inner dance. So in critical theory, through the work of Jacques Derrida, we look at the pharmakon. Now, the pharmakon is a Greek word that basically brings us back to the time when there was no difference between the medicine or the therapy, the healing, the remedy, and the word poison. That's such a deep notion, isn't it? Like, so pharmakon has these three definitions. So there's the medicine, and then there's the poison. And there are, like, in fact, like chemical understandings of how the cure is actually the very disease. So this, I think, is a way out of cognitive dissonance and fear avoidance. So that there are some people who have such insight that when they see a problem, they basically see that that problem is a solution hiding. Yet there are some people who see the solution and they're going to make a problem out of it. Okay, you know that basic metaphor of some people might see the glass and then there's some liquid in the glass. Some people would see that that glass is kind of half empty. Are you the kind of person who would look at that glass and see that no, that glass is half full? So depending on the situation and your perspective, you might see that this situation is an opportunity. And some people would say, no, that's a problem. And the moment you see it as a problem, you basically collapse that situation. You make it a particle as opposed to an energy wave. So I think when people do get asked to be laid down, there are these options. And mostly when people do lay down, they would see the problem more as a medicine. When people are in their conscious wake state, their eyes are open, there's usually the judgment to see that the situation is hard, it's coming out of scarcity, it's seen through the lens of lack. So our goal is to use our tools, whether it be the sound, the music, the vibration, the touch, the words, to bring all these together within a symphony. Um, aggregate all these together so that we can see that all problems are in fact medicinal. They are in fact all cures. Okay, so the third definition of the pharmakos is the scapegoat. I think this is a definitive thing for inner dance. That very act of laying down and getting exposed to the sound is, in a way, a form of absorbing. It's a form of absorption of the negativity of the energies seemingly in the outside, that we are able to convert poison into medicine. We're able to convert darkness into light. Now, the scapegoat is a symbol within the Greek and the Roman times, whereby a particular person or like animal is sacrificed by the community so that the sins and the problems of the community can go away. So many religions have this ritual of sacrifice in order to rid the world, the community, of the negativity. So in family systems theory, the scapegoat is like another animal, is the sheep that is black. The in family systems theory, the scapegoat is basically the sensitive person who often would be absorbing the sins or the negativities of the family because of their openness, their empathic nature, whereby other family members might be more logical, might tend towards hiding the things that are uncomfortable. So inner dance is, in a way, a ritual of, I don't want to say sacrifice, but we literally are absorbing the pain body of the world, and we're making something out of it. We're making gold out of lead. We're making light out of darkness. That healing process is a conversion of negativity into something whole. And this is a role that you are holding, that you don't need to keep circulating as something sacrificial. Like, in a way, like in family systems, the scapegoat is usually opposed to the hero in the family, the one who, makes more money and is more successful and has more power. This doesn't need to be a contradiction or an opposition. The scapegoat and the hero should be one and the same if everyone would not go into this competition where someone needs to always win for someone else to always give way and to surrender and to lose. But I just thought that this would be interesting in order to, especially in the long term, map out cultures like shame cultures and guilt cultures, where often, and this could be persona. There are cultures or personalities that are either projecting the sin, and someone's always absorbing the sin. If you're the type of person who has that sensitivity that you're always owning up to the bad or the wrong thing that's happening, then you're the humble person who's ready to accept what other people would rather just project as a form of blame. So within the brain, there's the mirror neuron system that is undergoing mirror neuron system that's undergoing changes when people do lay down in the inner dance process. Um, when we're able to look at the mirror, we're able to maybe take a step back so that just rather than just feeling guilty or ashamed, when we're able to hold that process of absorption, yet we're also able to witness. It's like we're not actually absorbing anymore. There's a reflexivity where a transformation or healing process takes place through pure observation. Um, so let's now, I think we're now allowed to wonder, what is cognitive resonance? I've been wondering about this for a long time. In my process of holding space for others, I actually find resonance in people who are experiencing modes of darkness, people who are very depressed, people in addiction, people who also have a history of, uh, wanting to end their project, called their name, their story, their life. People who are not afraid to go there into the darkness, they somehow have access to resonance that goes very deep in our understanding of the world. Like, these are people who are not afraid of pain. We have to find somehow comfort within the discomfort. Okay, we've already gone into maybe an understanding of why is it that when we solve a problem, we actually put the problem there. Like, literally, when we solve a problem because we energize that there was a problem to be solved, the problem can get even bigger. Like, literally, when I have performed inner dance to people who have these maladies, these problems, it could be something like cancer. If a cancer is healed from a superficial level, let's say, okay, an inner dance session helped to heal, let's say, a tumor, cancer, back problem, migraine. When people don't go into the roots of the problem because they really just wanted the problem to go away, so even though this is the solution, let's say the solution was the sickness would go away, if the dynamic was still coming from a problem solving mindset because people wanted to solve that problem, when the cancer comes back, and it will be very hard to solve that because there was a solidification, a concretization that I wanted to solve it because the problem was there. The problem is not going to be dissolved because of the belief structure that put the problem there to begin with. So for me, cognitive resonance would come from closing some kind of loop. The source, the destination, the alpha and omega need to come into each other. So I think there is some relevance in bringing up family systems theory in depth, so that healers are acting as surrogate parents, depending on your gender. And you can be a guy and you can still emit feminine archetypes. You can be feminine and you can still emit masculine archetypes. We become surrogate parents. There are mother and father systems that's related to the creation, destruction, and it's actually men that create. What women do is they conceive. They create the conditions where creation is even possible. That's what women do. Their bodies are able to conceive life. They don't create life. They create the conditions where life creates by itself. When we become too masculine and when we lose the process of conceiving, then there's something quite unnatural about the rhythms of constructing life, constructing thoughts, constructing the world. So the mother and the father need to be in harmony or in equilibrium. It doesn't matter what your gender is, you need to assist in both the construction, the creation, the conception, and the deconstruction of the energy. Which is to say, to be in resonance means you need to be able to bring about death and birth. Because when women do conceive, when women do get pregnant, when women as well go through the monthly cycle, they are once a month dying, and that process allows for a birthing. Like if you bring this symbolization into the healing process, the way you hold people needs to hold both constantly at the same time. The energy of being able to hold the problem and the darkness, the discomfort in a way that sees through it, not avoiding it, not trying to solve it, just looking at it, just being with it, seeing that that too is divine. That problem too is amazing. It's beautiful. It's good. Don't run away. Don't hide it. Um, then, then and there, a birthing would take place. So I think a lot of beginning facilitators are very excited at the birthing process. They're very excited at solving problems. That okay, you can go into wealth creation, you can become powerful, that this energy will solve everything, as opposed to stay with it, just be real with it. Then we would close the loop. So mom and dad would lead to basically the child. Like when you create the conditions, mom and dad come together and you are mom and dad. A child is born and this is you. You are the product of the masculine and feminine, whatever the archetype would be. For me, the mother is unconditional love. Father is wisdom, providing a mapping of the world, the universe, that you can use to mirror what you are doing here with purposiveness, with telos, with final purpose. Like, what is your birth vision for being here? It comes with an understanding of who are you, based on what are you, how long have you been here, like in this world. So let's go back to this. I'm interested in the laddering effect. Feel within the red, within the orange, the yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. People might hold here, for example, the illusion that everything is separate, and that would lead to all sorts of judgments, like dualities, because of this illusion that we are not one, we are not the source. Down here at the red, shouldn't have put it up there. It's maybe the fear of dying. You can see how this could be rooted in this illusion. If we are separate, then we can die. And then that would lead to all sorts of feelings or experiences that would become trauma. And then we would try to hide that, like in the yellow. I'm just giving you an example of how I map people out when I listen to clients, patients, participants. I would have a notebook where I would observe what are people afraid of. So then what are their core wounds? What's the trauma? And then what are their behavioral motivations? So they're trying too hard. What are they trying to hide? And then these would be translatable to the key emotions, their habitual feelings, which would lead to how they act act out their judgments towards other people. So you can see that there's within the mandala a kind of laddering effect where you to observe yourself and others and have that notebook open. I would be very interested in understanding how even within the body, our metabolic processes are in a way survivalist. Our bodies would hold this homeostatic wanting to survive, not wanting to die. Then that would be connected to our immunity responses. And then these body-based elements would translate to emotions. In many ways, our emotions are rooted in how our bodies have been dealing with like a hostile world, like being in nature, being in the earth where any day you can die. Then these middle feelings would lead to all kinds of feelings and thoughts. But basically, a lot of them start here from body-based systems that would translate to our mental, our mental system. Sorry, like bad handwriting. I'm holding my iPad in a awkward way. So when you help map things out for people, whether it be in a medical or psychological situation, they're all basically connected to each other. Emotions are rooted in metabolic processes. Feelings and thoughts arise as systems stem from these key survival and death denial functions, uh, which seems to be rooted in the red, but still come from like the indigo, or I mean the violet. You see, like the roots are still coming from spiritual awareness, which can still be bound up by illusions. So let's say the moment you let's say looked at the mirror and you saw your own like image, you became an image. You were not anymore yourself. You became the image, and that led to this illusion that I am separate even from myself. All the more I am separate from the others. So the inner dance experience is very much the journey of the image itself coming to know itself as its pure self. The image becomes a sound. The image goes back to the source of itself. Okay, I would love for you to study transactional analysis. We will send you 2 books that come from the author of this amazing body of work. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's the psychologist named Byrne. Transactional analysis is a post or extra Freudian movement that needed to deepen the understanding of our internal psychological dynamics, aka the unconscious. Freud gave us the unconscious. What transactional analysis helps to bring us is it's not just about the unconscious, it's also about how we are developing our individual selves through the collectivism. There has to be something about the social dynamic, interactive element that conditions us. Our final emotional state is the result of our internal dialogue between the parts of ourselves. So collective doesn't just mean then the people around you, because of your exposure to the people around you. Within you, there's also a collective. So within your own psyche, there is a conversation, there's an internal dialogue between your many parts. You have this schizophrenia. So whether it be you're experiencing something from the outside or the inside, you would still be coming from the conditioning of the past based on how you allowed the messages that were spoken to influence what is now called your mind. So let's look at these key messages, okay, the messages that have been internalized, that was initially coming nurture, from nature, that was nurtured inside. These are 12 basic injunctions Burns' work had observed as common to. So injunctions would be the no. It's like, don't be you. Don't be, okay? People who might have these uh, experiences of neglect, not feeling loved. Don't be yourself. Don't be a child. Grow up. Don't grow up. Don't succeed. You're not powerful. Just don't do that. Know your limitations. You're only human. You're not worthy. You're not important. Uh this circle is exclusive. You don't belong here. You're not amazing enough. Lack of intimacy, which does lead to depression, is founded on stay far away. I simply don't like your presence. Uh, you're not basically healthy, or you are stupid, and don't let your emotions get in the way of life. So these are basically the negativities that are stored coming from these initial simple messages that uh, can really really take hold. They sound very very simple. The messages are basically delivered in very complex ways, performing double binds. And how they become double binds is when injunctions can basically mix up with the drivers. So these are the five drivers, five common drivers. Even as you receive these drivers also come up. Okay, even though you're not really, worthwhile, I would still love you to be perfect. You have to be, you have to get perfect grades in your exams. You have to be better than your brother or your sister. Uh, be strong, try hard. If you always please people, and most especially, my favorite is, we're going to be late. There's never enough time. You have to hurry up. You can see the differences between this and this. The injunctions is don't, and here is do. And these are always intermixing in dysfunctional families that haven't figured out how to go beyond insecurities and narcissisms in family systems. So taking these, okay, these are quite interesting, and I will send you both of Burns' important books that look at these, what are called life scripts. These are the movie scripts that uh, influence our narratives. So when you listen to what people are speaking within the healing circles, these life scripts are very, very influential. We would still try to apply that within the energy process. So we would bring up the inner dance mandala as the masculine that helps to hold the feminine ground. The energy wave is held by the key of seven, the seed of life, or the flower of life, which would have the number 13 rather than the number seven. To simplify that, when I help to hold like you've probably taken this up before. I think it's a lot simpler to see it like through this. That this might be the wait. These might be the injunctions, and these could be healthy drivers. That there's nothing wrong with having healthy. Oh, why did you do that? Healthy drivers. You get my point. Don't need to write it down. Um, so when I listen to people's messages, this is what I can hear. Like simply, are they saying they lack they lack something to work. It doesn't write. Let's just write it down here. Say violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. So let's say your mapping would come out of the concept or modality of lack. If you were to translate the messages that people are speaking, injunctions would be, I lack wholeness. I lack integration. I don't understand. I'm confused. I basically lack knowledge. I basically lack effective communication. No one listens to me. I can't speak my truth. I lack understanding. I basically lack support. No one is supporting me. I lack support. No one loves me. I am in the yellow, it being about power. I lack power. I lack efficacy. I lack the ability to act out my insight. Okay, I lack agency. I'm not able to act out my dreams. In the orange, what I lack in the orange is freedom, and in the red, I lack resources. I'm poor, basically. So you can see, just this was one example within one singular context. You can already map out how one system holding an injunction, either within the violet, to say lack integration, and that would lead to other forms of lack within dimensions. Okay, that's really just one domain. There could be other domains that we could look at. So were you to deal with this, say you're hearing this within a particular color, two colors, three colors within what people are holding, then to lead people into the opposite of these dramas, then you would speak the language of like fullness, either color per color or like within the whole rainbow, like because they're all interconnected with each other. So it's the same. Like I'm filled with integration. I am wise. I already have the understanding. If it not within me, clearly it is coming to me. It is emerging from within me. Like the truths that I'm speaking is meant to be for those who can hear me at the right time. There is always a dialogue where people are sending me the right messages, and I'm sending them the right messages. If there's continuity, like everything is the universe speaking to itself. Depending on how well you can speak that could heal the lack that's being experienced in the blue. In the green, it would be everything that you give unto others, you give back to yourself. The universe supports you even when you don't see it. In the yellow, there is an abundance of power when you're not coming out of obligation and you're feeling that you are stagnant, that you are lacking self-efficacy, which is the belief that you can do it. And the power issue is very, very, usually very connected with the other colors. If you do work in the other colors, so let's say in the indigo, like I know myself, I have self-esteem in the blue, and in the green, I have self-love. In the violet, I am whole, then power naturally comes about. There are a lot of people who are coming from this severe lack in the yellow who would then be overachievers. A lot of facilitators and healers become powerful people despite the fact that they don't actually know themselves so well yet. They don't have a philosophy or an identity that has really been well, like coherently thought out. And if they're coming from low self-esteem, they try to cover that up with like a lot of power. So I think power needs to be subjugated by a lot of the other colors. There's nothing wrong with power, but power needs to take a step back when it's not yet the right time. Like love, wisdom, and service can lead to power. Sometimes the smallest amongst us hold the most power in their vulnerability. We just need to wait. Okay. So and so on and so forth. Like people who are having a hard time with money and resources, when we come from love, when we come from wisdom, resources will come when we find the right time to experience ourselves as strong agents of creation, like creation and conception being in the orange. But when we are not free, when we are obliged, then that's still coming from a deep place of lack. So shifting people from one to the other. Do you see what I just did here? Basically, here is a systematization of. So we started from here. This is Burns' work. You remember, like the 12 injunctions and the 5 drivers. Translating that for energy healers who observe that when people do lay down, they do see the colors, they see the vibrations, they see the frequencies. How to translate the 12 injunctions and the 5 um, drivers, the mandala is something we can more easily hold in the work that we do. I hope you're seeing that here. Okay, so that would present a kind of indigo violet to help all the other colors, basically. And that like this would be a form of cognitive resonance, because for me, you remember how I spoke about like the alpha and the omega, the need to close the loops, um, to experience the mom as unconditional love. That this is you bring love to others, but at the same time, what you're developing as you are learning, like educating yourself, you're also nurturing the father inside you. I think to achieve cognitive, not just embodied or heart-based resonance. Cognitive resonance is also a meta cognition. To arrive at wisdom is to arrive at a self-understanding. I feel that it is very hard to close the loop when people haven't really become conscious of their own consciousness. So for me, cognitive resonance is also meta cognitive. And this is a form of meta, not just metacognition, but also meta spirit, meta communication, meta service or love, meta power, meta emotion, and meta sustainability, like in the red. Those are different colors. That is how I think we would achieve resonance too. So meaning to focus too much, let's say on, let's say, energy or power, like I am powerful. Like if you read, let's say, the old Carlos Castaneda books, how the ancient shamans or naguals in Mexico used to explain the path to awakening. The old books were writing a lot about like power. I don't think the Western anthropologists who studied these truly understood though what they meant by power. They were still very much rooted in wisdom that allows the power to emanate. I think a lot of people who are in a hurry are really just interested in energizing, and that is very much a lack of meta. I think that fails to arrive at a true resonant point. So it could just come from pure love, but love without wisdom, it is a lack. Love being philo, okay, and wisdom being Sophie. To arrive at a metacognition means to arrive onto a philosophy of self and the world. And together we are like as a group, as a community, arriving at a metacognition. You're becoming conscious of individuated and collective consciousness. So I feel that is a beautiful way of looking at how the indigo works. Now, I want to go into something a lot more concrete beyond this alignment, but I guess you're getting at what I want to frame here in terms of indigo, where you to hold your wisdom or seeing process, like how to observe, like the complex. Okay, remember we started off with chaos theory and the theory of complexity, how to understand a brain, how to understand um, the universe, how to understand the ecosystem, the earth, which is quite complex. To arrive at a whole systems theory, like everything in the universe can be seen through a mandala. And here we're looking at the complexity of psychology. This would, become a form of psychology to go with the energy process and the embodied forms of healing the biological. So I want to go into the concrete now. What is a meta biology or a meta neurology? So going further into the map, I had really put some work into this because we're conducting this current training in Maya. I actually had to create this PowerPoint before people had arrived in Maya. Normally, I'm unable to do that. So I've been able to practice with the other online group as well and the current training in Maya. I want to go cover certain study elements that I have not really talked about as much in the past. And it's about certain elements that can explain the 12 stages through the theory of learning and the unlearning. Okay, so inner dance is a pathway to wisdom and learning, but the doorway is normally by first like unlearning our illusions, our judgments, our over motivations, our bad habits, the habits that are coming from the lower self. So we would look at the stages of birth, and apoptosis would be the death of the self, the micro self, which is the cell, the cellular self. Okay, so it's very easy to see the energy process is very good at freeing people up, but uh, a lot of people have a hard time with understanding the role of restriction. So in fact, when we are unlearning, we are freeing up connections in our brain, like old connections, connections that might have performed limitations in our psyche. So interestingly, when you study how we learn, basically, let's say this is the brain. This is the new brain, the cortex. This is the brain stem. And underneath, like inside, you have the subcortical old brain system, the basal ganglia system. When you learn, initially when we're born, right, we have all these connections. No, we don't have the connections. What we have are neurons. We have 100 billion neurons. We have way, way more neurons as babies than adults. So there's a reason why we have less neurons as adults. We have to, at a certain point, start restricting the potentials that were hard to even count, the amount of possibilities these neurons in babies could interconnect with each other. We have to limit them when we learn language, particularly when we learn to read and write. Every time we learn new concepts, we would in fact learn to restrict connections so that we can actualize potentials. So there are stages where we would have to first unlearn, to let go of old connections in order for us to rebuild new connections. There would be these stages. So if we were to look at the the 12 stages then as a model, this is a good way. I think this is an interesting way to take up both the sleep stages and also the 12 stages of transformation. Sleep stages would be 5, and then you'd have the 12 stages of transformation. It's interesting these numbers are still there, having just gone through the number 12 and the number 5 transformation. Having just gone through the injunctions in the driver where there were 12 and 5. All right, so let's look at the stages of cell growth and cell death, as well as synaptic growth and the pruning process. Okay, so in the beginning, there is the neurogenetics, neurogenesis or neurulation. Neurulation is the process of generating new neurons. I think we might have gone over this when you study neuroplasticity as a science in previous iterations of understanding the brain. There was this theory that adults cannot really grow new neurons. Like neurogenesis is not so possible for adults. Adults cannot really grow new brain cells anymore. Now, this is now been tested. It is now a well-known fact that adults very well grow new neurons all the time, especially during sleep. But this occurs primarily in the development of the embryo. It is in embryonic development that this occurs mostly. So by the time you come out of the womb, you would have probably birthed the most number of neurons that will become useful in the long term. So after neurogenesis, there is a stage of cell migration, when and where brains would travel to their final destination. And this process is guided by chemical signals and is essential for later on the proper wiring of brain circuits. So cells journey. They don't stay in place. They're born in one area and then they move to other areas. And once they move, that's when cell differentiation would occur. So this is a stage when brain cells become specialized and acquire distinct functions. During the stage, neurons start to express specific genes that determine their identity and their role in the brain. So there might be specific neurons, for example, that would become part of the hypothalamus. There would be other cells that would become part of the thalamus. There'd be other cells that would be part of the hippocampus or part of the auditory cortex. Okay, so that's differentiation, cell differentiation. They would need to adopt their identity. This is what I would become. You know, like it's so interesting, isn't it, that each cell would have its own psyche. Okay, after cell differentiation, there will be cell maturation. And this is the process through which neurons develop and mature structurally and functionally. Neurons undergo significant changes they basically undergo transformation. And this is initially how they start to establish differentiation and connections with other neurons. Speaking that's basically a stage called synaptogenesis, or beautifully, that is called basically like pathfinding. So when I get people to lay down, I would often say the statement, your body is a highway system of or for light. Okay, So information is really just passing through, and you are a network or a highway system for electricity or light. Light travels through you, and you are basically the pathway. Okay, so this is the stage. Wait, this is this synaptogenesis or pathfinding is the stage. Where was that? Synaptogenesis is stage when new axons in the cell grows as well as dendrites, which are structures needing to link with other nerve cells. So then you can develop synapses, which allows communication with other cells. Like transmission of messages can happen from one brain cell or neuron to another. So basically here you have, let's say, a new neuron, and here you have another neuron, and here you have these are the dendrites. And then in this neuron, you would have the axon hillock. And then you have a long axon that needs to communicate. So let's say this is neuron number 1, this is neuron number 2. They would communicate through the synapse. This is the synapse where the long axon and then the short dendrite would communicate with each other. So that's how a connection or even an insight is made. Okay, so moving along. There are specific moments in life when there is in fact an overproduction of synapses. Now, I want to take this up because this is something that happens in the inner dance and the activation process. You can say I'm being fair here. No, this is about inner dance. Like I'm not really making the specific based on what you name or call it. Synaptic overproduction happens in the energy process. So let's wonder initially, how do you create a synapse? One of the most effective ways to synapse is to actually move your body. Okay, so when you move your body, you create a connection. So every time a fetus moves a body a certain way, you establish a connection between neurons. Literally every time you move your body a certain way, every time you go somewhere, let's say to the office, to the shopping mall, to the library, to the market, to the bank, by moving your body, you establish a highway system for light to be guided to travel from point A to point Z, from alpha to Z. So that's one of the functionality of the motor programs. Okay, when you move your body, you can synapse. So in the energy process, when the body is moving, then you can synapse. So you can see that there could be the stage where you can overproduce synapses in the process of unlearning and then relearning, in the excitement, in the explosion of wanting to connect. It is in fact possible to overproduce, and when you overproduce, it becomes difficult to think, because when you have too many connections, what you become is unlimited, and it's very hard to speak. It can be hard to think when you undergo this overproduction process. So in order to deal with that, then you have to get rid of unnecessary cells and unnecessary connections. Okay, what's the best way to prune? And pruning is a form of learning. So I just answered my question. When you start to learn, coming from the space of unlearning, you're already pruning what has been overproduced. And you actually are killing cells as well, because there are unnecessary cells. Now, neurons, just like other cells, are very expensive. If you keep raising the amount of brain cells that you have, you can't just keep growing your brain. There has to be a systematicity to grow. It's okay to grow a bigger brain, but if you go overboard, that will tend to be expensive. It takes a tremendous amount of oxygen, blood, of nutrients to keep that growing. You cannot undergo exponential growth for the sake of it. You need to decide. You literally need to restrict as well. You can't just be a child who just does everything that the child wants to do without like a structure. There has to be a healthy set of restrictions. There has to be rules that are set in order to hold boundaries or containers to hold what people call like energy. There has to be a space to hold the energy. There has to be restrictions. So this is normal. This happens to everyone. Cell death and pruning happens every night, especially when we're digesting, we're resting. Synaptogenesis happens often when we are moving around. When we are learning and resting, cell death and pruning can happen. And finally, very important, myelogenesis, okay, is the process that is the final stage of brain development. This is where myelin, the supportive fatty tissue, is produced, and it wraps around the nerve fiber. Myelin acts as an insulator and allows for faster, faster and further transmission of electrical signals across the brain. So this is to say, if you overpower the brain with light, you actually would not lead to myelination always if you are expending a lot of energy in the synapsing process. To create efficiency through myelogenesis or gliogenesis, you actually commit to the synapses that are more important, that leads to your learning. In one of our groups, we were talking about education. When you educate your own brain, your own body, you basically solidify or concretize your new self. When you're not making commitments, let's say you just keep synapsing, over producing connections and not solidifying certain connections that are key to your development. And I'm not talking about just egoic development. I'm talking about a more whole systems, social self that really becomes almost a planetary consciousness that is very present in today's age of the internet. Balancing these would be maybe a way of, oh, where did I put that? Maybe here, yeah. So this is how I would love to approach the 12 stages all the more. Like for example, like here, no, let's do another color. Here in stage number 5, where slow wave sleep or non-REM 5 is happening, where delta energy is very, very much dominant through GABA, okay? Like inhibiting a lot of the other activity that's sort of very active in these wake stages. Here's where myelogenesis is happening. So understanding synapting, synaptogenesis is happening when the body is moving. Your goal is to hold the the high and the low together. I don't know what I'm trying to do there, but basically, wake and sleep need to balance out. So when you have these energy states that are much too high, like much too active, that's where synaptic overproduction would occur. And to balance that out, there has to be the pruning. There needs to be apoptosis. There needs to be enough cell death for there to be uh, even like what we're going for is not just becoming like kids. We're here to mature. We're here to grow old. Maturation, cell maturation, and myelogenesis is synaptic 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 maturation when you myelinate synapses or axons, fibers. That's when you grow old. So I feel that a lot of the energy process, particularly through this form, which could also be inner dance, admittedly, when there's a lack of certain brain waves elements like GABAergic, non-REM free, slow wave sleep, resting, digesting, we're basically focused on the growth process, not from an upward space, but where people are growing down, which is very much an unlearning process. And we are just as interested in people growing up, not just growing down, because we realize we do have this power on like babyfying people, but how do we adultify ourselves and the people that we're holding, right? So let me do a time check. It's 10:40. Um, I think this is good. I do have so many other notes, but I want to see if this currently inspires some questions or some observations. For now, um, if you find this interesting, at least as a way of understanding the wave, um, I sort of want to leave some other things to be discussed in the next call rather than to try to talk about everything. We still could if we had the time, but I think there's something quite independent for the other call. So I want to open the space. Questions? You find this interesting at all? Even it's a good way to see indigo. There were basically two very big sections there regarding the mandala. Uh, we talked about cognitive dissonance, resonance, double bind theory. Um, what else is there? Transactional analysis, the life scripts of the injunctions and the drivers, and then seeing that from whole systems mandala and colors, and then the death of the self. I think what would complete that would be to talk about how long-term depression, long-term potentiation work, but there are too many terms there as to how we in fact build a thought out of a synaptic connection. Okay, so yeah, I'll be quiet now. Let me see if you guys have interesting thoughts that comes up in your notebook. What are you realizing? What are you wondering about?
Okay, hello everyone. I took many notes. I like to see the connection in the connections in the indigo and the red, and it's like something really important for me also to look into as individual and also collective. looking into the collective. On Sunday, we had our blue call with my Spanish group, and we were talking about it. We were talking about like how we are living in a cognitive dissonance, like collectively. We were looking into the word like cancer, and how like I think like a collective change of paradigm could help like to heal many bodies, body minds. And if we were not afraid of these words, because I was taking this example of since we are kids, we are listening to this word like cancer, and it's like a really like something that we are afraid. Like we know that we are gonna die someday. We don't know how yet, but this is something like a black shadow that we are growing with. Like I think like since we are kids, and above all our generations, because I've seen like my grandparents, they were not like that much sick, and there is something like happening and changing also. And we were looking into this word like cancer, how to heal from the roots. This word, how can we talk to the cancer, to paraphrase the book, The Transformation Medicine, and how we can like hold space, like as a space holders, like taking responsibility as a facilitator, but also as a participant regarding the truth, like not the truth, but all the colors of the mandala. And for me, I wanted to share this also, that this studying process, since I'm in it like for almost like 4 years now, has been really like the most powerful healing device for me. Yeah, because I was able to, and I'm still into this. I think it's infinite, but I see like the mandala like moving mandala, like you're moving to one color to the other, and then you see yourself through this different like perspective, until you are really like honest about yourself. Like you are in the middle and you are looking at all these mirrors. It's like for me, I always use the not holographic, but kaleidoscope. I like this word, like because it's a lot of mirrors, and you can look at yourself through the colors, and you can look also at at others through this mandala. And it's so powerful, like, and so deep in the sense like you're able to, I don't know how to express this. Like it's like to read kind of the information from another space that is more like no judgment space towards yourself or the other, and you access like so many layers of information and subtle information, like micro expression, like words. The words, I really love the call in the blue, the colors in the blue, because there is something underneath in this transitory space, this space of transition. So trying to explain myself, but like this mandala is really like the most powerful and deepest device that I've seen in these spiritual realms. I was also discussing about the spiritual modalities, like and this like amount of information that we are receiving, and above all through the social medias. If you look at the social medias, like people will talk about emotions. Okay, how to heal your emotions. Okay, how to heal like your feet, how to heal your eyes or your hair, be beautiful, be this or that. So we are bypassing like the holistic vision. We are just disconnecting more and more people from the whole. And you were also talking about injunctions. And for me, one that is really, really, really important is don't cry as a boy or girl, because it's like bypassing the homeostatic, like a response of your body. So since we are like kids, it's like we are like to fit into this human social society. rules and container that we are all growing into. And I see it like really in Thailand also. I came across like so many nationalities. So it's really like obvious for me where does this person come from using this word or this attitude. It's super funny to observe also. But I lost the point, like, sorry. But yeah, how, like, to fit in this human container society, we are being disconnected more and more from the earth, from the ancient part of ourselves, from our dad or wisdom, you know? We are growing, we try to grow into the love, or sometimes we do not, but we are still like, we
Mm.
are growing into something really disconnected. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share.
It's
Sorry.
almost like when you were describing how people are in mass media, which is today social media is the mass media. The way we perceive the earth is it's a problem. It's a problem to be solved. And everything we look at is a manifestation of a part of the earth. So we become really good at problem solving. I'm happy Fiona's here. Singaporeans are like the key problem solvers. We would tell Fiona and her husband, okay, we need this, and then they're like, I can solve that right away. So we've been so good at solving problems, but we're not really good at actually looking at them. Like I used to spend time with like Asians in like Malaysia, for example, and then I literally would watch people get diagnosed with something like cancer, and then as soon as they get the diagnosis, I couldn't believe it. It could be that afternoon they already scheduled an operation for the next day. They didn't give it any gap to feel into this thing in the body. It's so reductive, materialistic, and deterministic. It's cause and effect. There's no looking at this in depth that maybe this is coming from something. They literally would get either the operation, the chemotherapy the next day. They wouldn't schedule it like the next week. We're so afraid of the energy of the problem. Sorry, I don't know if I cut you, but keep going.
No, it's okay. Just like wanted to answer to the cancer because like so obvious for me that when someone has get diagnosed of any type of cancer, like the first like thought I think in the collective consciousness is death sentence. Gonna die. Yeah, you're finished. You know, it's like so many fears about it, and I'm wondering like how can we like really support this process because people want the final answer. They want to be to get to the final point. You know, they don't want to through the process. And I think as a space holder or a human being, we need to reconnect with the process. Like in yoga too, like teachers, or you don't learn like to do like this is good meditation or this is a good asana or whatever. It's like this is the process that is like where is the worth and where is the grow. And as we are like we don't hold on to the pain. We just want to bypass it. We just want to take paracetamol or whatever. Mm, you know, this thing also with the COVID, it was like an explosion of there is a cure with the vaccine, so we bypass anything else. Like you just need to take the vaccine, and you know, it's not any opinion on it, but I'm like wondering on how we can like grow into this kind of society also when like so all the medias and all the authorities that we are trusting, they are telling you, yeah, take this because it's not enough that what you have inside you. So I'm wondering, like, with an inner dance perspective, how to look into everything, like in this red and in the addiction also. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you so much. I really love these topics.
Thank you. Okay, who else would like to contribute now?
I'll go. Um, you guys can hear me? Yeah. I think I can definitely resonate with the double binding theory. Uh, I think Pi knows uh, my name used to be Fiona Healer. I changed it 2 months ago. The reason why I removed the name is because exactly what Pi was talking about. People think that healers must be perfect, like light, good, loving, wise, and all of that. And I feel like I couldn't be myself because I'm always being judged by a lot of people. Like the way they look at me when I say certain things, when I'm just being myself. Like, oh, okay, that's interesting coming out from a healer's mouth. Because I'm pretty blunt with the way I speak. I'm honest as hell. Like if you suck, I would kind of say in a way that you suck. Like if you're amazing, I'll say you're amazing. And I'm also really how do I say, I'm so honest about the shit I go through and all of that. And um in a way, I feel like I also push a lot of people away um, as a healer because I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect as a healer, and um, I don't feel like I'm like that. But this is how I'm getting the response from others. I feel very judged by others, and I'm like, shit, fuck this name. I'm gonna remove it. um, so I removed it, and I thought I have been going through enough death already because I started going through a death cycle since April. I feel like I was dissolving and nothing else matters anymore, the kind of thing. Um, and I thought, okay, let me go to Bali for a month and do a yoga teacher training. Maybe I'll feel better, just be absorbed in some kind of grounded practice and in nature. I came back and I continue to die, and I'm still dying right now. um, it's definitely not an easy process because last year I was on the high. Last year I was doing so fucking well. I'm getting clients almost every day. I earned a lot of money last year, and I'm not even asking for them. They are just coming to me. And this year is like quiet as hell. And I'm like, what's going on? And I start to feel all the lack and all the stuff, unworthiness and all these things. Like, yeah, um, I don't know. I'm feeling depressed actually in the last couple of weeks because even my body is going down. So I definitely resonate with what Pi was talking um, about the body, the sickness, the depression. So yeah, I think I needed this call. Definitely, I feel like this call is for me today. Yeah, my body is down. I can't do much work. I have to cancel my class. I have to cancel my workshops. Money is not coming in. But last year was completely contrasting. Last year was on the high. I was on the go. Money is coming in all the time. Now it's like nothing is coming in. Body is down. Name change. So yeah, perhaps this is my inner dance process. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Uh, I just want to state that when we go into the right brain, this is when we have more connections. And most people undergoing depression are right brained. The happiest people are, in fact, very left brained, very systematic, very linear, and more limited. Um, we did discuss this in the last call where people experiencing extreme REM states of sleep um, are tending towards depression, so that when you in fact limit their REM state consciousness while they're sleeping, a lot of that arousal um, also dies down. And that's why a lot of people might be in antidepressants, antipsychotics. It's because they are limiting all these connections. Um, I was advising someone who had been through a lot of dark nights of the soul over the last years, who's now shifting into the inner dance practice and has gone through a Kundalini activation training, not without the P, it's just like another training. So he's wondering, how do I get out of this depressive state? And my only advice is usually like, you need to do it now, one day at a time, because there is so much to gain from like overproducing, because we need to establish this potency to connect like all these things. But the stages or steps into like myelinating, like finding the right connections in the brain, these would be like a day at a time. It would be slow, but like learning not to restrict would mean number one, like learning to give things up that weren't really like doing much. It sometimes feels like, okay, I'm doing a lot, I'm achieving a lot, but it may not actually be doing that much when we are starting to maintain success levels that aren't as meaningful, because maybe some of those, like powerful, successful things that we were doing, maybe there was like a hamster wheel energy there that's simply in energy maintenance as opposed to deep meaning. So this thing, the stage that Fiona is speaking from, I think it's a necessary, awkward transition many people have to go through uh, to 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 activate is one thing, to make active, to become active rather than passive is another. To activate too much is also to create a passivity in the brain and in the body. So that when we have too many connections, that is one of the reasons why we go into depression. Um, and there is a spiritual depression. So now to go back into linearity, to take things a day at a time, to linearize, it is, I think, the next phase. Meaning we have to go through this. It's stage number 10 in the 12 stages. So in order to go to the 11th, you need to retract to stage number 8, which is choice. The reason why number 8 still leads to number 10, which is the dark night, is because of the duality. If we're still coming from duality, we would be bipolar. So sometimes when we succeed, we are also doomed to failure. So something we're hoping to achieve is to not have to ride this escalator of going up and down. Like, we don't want to go high just to keep crashing down. We want to get to a space where there's something more efficient that's not seesawing like back and forth. And our bodies and minds want to be sure. So we are having to be cleansed. It's because we've seen too much. The kinds of statements that Fiona was speaking, these are stuff that you might hear from like old souls, like people who have gone through this and been through that and have really just learned and are now maturing. A lot of people mature after the midlife. That would be after 40, after coming into 50. We're experiencing that a lot earlier, which would save us a lot of grief. Because if we try to wait it out to figure things out later on in life, maybe we would rather fail now rather than succeed now, and then later just experience the paradox, the contradiction. the dichotomy, if the dichotomy is still there, it will still come up. So I like this sharing of contrasting last year to this year, because you can see the rising and falling. If it's happening, it's because she's allowing it. It's because she's not scared. She's not a bullshitter person who, if we were to come from what Caro was saying, she's not okay to bypass things anymore. If you're already seeing too much, even at your young age, you're not going to be okay if you know that it's still illusory. It's still there's still something fake. It just means that you're too honest already to ignore the double bind. So you're not just doing that for yourself. Like healers, you could still use those words. We're always channeling the environment. We're always empathic with the people that we're holding. So you're never healing alone. You're always being held by the space that you are holding. The space holder is the space. And becoming space is very depressing. It means higher level of authenticity. And that's why I have to bring up the scapegoat, the pharmacon, which is it's going back to a time when the cure was the poison. There really was a time when we didn't have distinction between the poison and the medicine. If we came from that, then we are simply heading back to that. It's not a historical space. It's a dimensionality that had always been there, but we had to hide that in order to construct these societies that are built on pain avoidance and pleasure seeking, meaning addiction. The world is dealing with addiction right now, which is the highest form of bypassing. It's the highest form of coping with duality. So I think we're healing not the problem, but problem solving itself. What we're healing is this illusion that the world is a problem. And when we heal that, then we become a solution. We walk into a space and we resonate simply that there's no problem. We just think, we just put it there, but that can't be a thought. That can't be something you conceptualize. It needs to be embodied, meaning the transition cannot be mental. We have to grow into that space. You can't escape that. You need to feel it. It needs to be grounded. And the boon, the gift, the blessing that comes out of that is nothing will hurt you, nothing will kill you. Which is to say, most people who are near to cognitive resonance are people who have undergone 1,000 deaths. 1,000 deaths, So thank you for sharing your 1,000 deaths. It's not stopping, because then you get to a point where there is no death. Okay. Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Yeah.
Yeah, there was so much that resonated with me. Like Fiona, I was just complete in chaos right before 1 hour of the call. And everything about the violet is my life right now. And I was just completely shocked when I was reading the notes and everything. And I'm like, oh, okay. So one thing that resonates very deeply is the fact that it is like, I just wrote the notes down. It is easy to find resonance in the body, but much more complicated to find resonance in the mind. This is something that's coming up in spaces. And one of the ways that I'm seeing that deep transformation is happening is right after the sessions, when sharing circles. during sharing circles, when the opportunity for asking questions are opened and we go so deep, and then that's when so much questions come up and people get to ask these. And I feel like there is something different happening there, as well as at the beginning when people do ask questions. So something different happens during the activations. And that just pushes me, that these pockets of spaces, you know, where people are asking questions and getting informed, there is something deeper happening there, which is allowing for a deeper activation. And both of them go hand in hand. And that's like, I'm just thinking about it over and over again, that how the education piece is so important. That's one thing. The other is, oh, there's so much. The thing about sweeping the problems under the rug. And there's a lot of people who tend to do that in the sessions, and they just want to have a good time. But I've been noticing that this energy just like completely pushes people, like, okay, here's your problem, you gotta face it. And it comes up to them in the session, and they have this facing of that even after, and they tell me about it later, and I see this steep change when they do face it, as opposed to sometimes when they're caught in the loop. And I can see that as well when they're like in the fight or flight and running away, sweeping the dirt under the rug. So that's one piece. And the other piece, I think this is a little bit personal, but I'll just go back to light language because, my gosh, it's just been, it's like, it's kind of like chaotic right now, how things are unfolding and evolving. And when you mentioned that there is this overproduction of synaptic neuron connections, it's very difficult to ground. And I feel like this is what's happening when I do light language activations. And there was this one time I did it online, and my eyes were closed and I completely forgot about everybody. And afterwards, I couldn't really speak at all in English. And I was like, what's happening? Am I forgetting language? That's one. And I don't know what was happening. But the last one, and that one also, I was like, I couldn't think, I couldn't communicate properly in English afterwards. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. Probably need to ground or something, but yeah, it makes sense. That's that.
There's a lot there structurally with understanding that light language part. So we're not antagonistic to that. We're not anti-light language. It just needs to be something we'll be curious about because we're experiencing it. And there is a way of balancing that out if we understand what's happening. I think the cure to that, this is going to be really interesting for me, is to study how music and language mirror each other. I'm really excited about going into music production. I want to observe what happens to people in that light language, inner dance, Kundalini process in brains when we really start going into how we would produce like the sound in a way that's systemic, that helps to hold the pruning, the apoptosis. It's like pruning. It's like letting go of a lot of the expensive connections once you know who you are becoming. Okay, I do not need to be the whole universe right now. I don't need to be infinite. I can also be me. So that's where you don't loop anymore, because you're now advancing, you're progressing, you're developing, you're growing. The scary thing about going back to clarity is choice. Light language is like choosing from universality, and then when you go to language, you're defining, you're naming, you're choosing. They're both amazing, they're both important to hold. A lot of people are not able to go into light language because they're too much choosing the old still. So going into that aphasia, which is partly light language, is the ability to unchoose. There is a lot to gain from being able to jump back and forth, though, across dimensions. But when we lose grounding, we can lose definitely the sense, because we don't know anymore the differentiation between the new and the old. I don't think the old can entirely disappear, but when the old still, that's what the lack of knowledge or self-awareness, that's what it brings, like the anchoring of the new. Because when people like cope and escape from the old, when they haven't really anchored the new, something formative, something vast, something meta systemic, despite the fact that you are unwiring, you will still tend towards the old because that's what you know. That's where addiction and ego inflation can arise in some people who go into that a little bit too much, or depression, because they're still referring to the sense of limitations that would not like expand, extend, grow. So one of the reasons why the classic form of playlisting is so key to a lot of inner dance facilitators in the past was because when you commit to parts of the playlist, it could be as simple as drawing out a song and then putting that in order, and then disordering and then reordering. That's what you do in light language, right? You're rearranging the morphemes and the phonemes, the sounds, in ways that are breaking the rules down. Um, synaptic overproduction can lead to the fear of commitment, because we're now in that like super vast dimensionality, and we can't name things anymore. That's why it's hard to talk, because we're having a hard time making a choice. That's what prevents people from committing to the new being, the grounded being. It's like unlearning is really freeing up, but to learn again, not to unlearn, to learn again, you need to restrict. You need the boundary. You need to hold new rules, not just like no rules. Like, I don't care. So I'm just going to be anything. I'm going to do anything I want. You still need proper containment in order to mature. And that's the trouble. Like when people have a hard time jumping from that vastness back into the world. So what I love about like playlisting is you can go into the enjoyment of like organizing your own system, and then being able to draw upon that infinite pool of like sounds, noise, frequencies, music, in order to construct a narrative, like a journey. Once again, a person needs to now commit from the infinite. That's it. That's really what just needs to happen, because we can see it's quite easy to jump into the abyss, because it means we can just surrender the old pathways. When you study neuroplasticity, it's easier to build new connections rather than to try to rebuild the old connections which are broken after going through distress and depression. To try to rebuild the old connections means you're just trying to recapitulate old habits, new thoughts, old behavior, old thoughts, old moods. When we haven't really learned and we haven't really extended from what we used to know into what we are coming to know. Uh, so it takes a tremendous amount of energy to grow. Absolutely, that it takes a lot of energy to make new commitments. When we feed that like spiraling downward energy, that surrender energy to human beings, they will find it a lot easier to just become like kids, which is really, really blissful. But it takes a lot of energy to do what's hard, which in the brain would be the prefrontal cortex. It's easier to trigger the amygdala, which triggers the emotion. And we have been learning about the amygdala hijack. It's easier to feel than to mediate that fear state sometimes, or that anxiety, or that excitement through insight, through seeing the many layers like simultaneously with each other, the way that maps out taxonomically all the concepts that you know, which are now reorganizing themselves. It's like you're learning to design your own mind. You're literally like interior designing your own consciousness in a way that was not in accordance to the injunctions and drivers that created this victimization, this sense that you are painted by an external artist rather than you are constructing your own universe from inside. I think that's what the real awakening process is, like to be given the paintbrush, the pen, the clay to construct your own image of yourself as an extended mind, something that's not just ego, but the species itself. It grows through you after having learned, because it's ancient, it's been here a long time. That's a really big jump. It's not easy, this task right now, to be in this age of the internet, because we're so exposed to information, not canceling any of it out. We're integrating all of that. It's such a quantum leap. It takes a tremendous amount of learning or growing in order to achieve this level of integration that's unheard of in the past. We're not just learning to be ourselves, we're channeling the collective now, because of the exposure. The narration isn't just cultural, it's so multicultural. The timeline that we're absorbing is from Big Bang to black hole. So when you hear the word embodiment, it's quite inconceivable what is asked of, even for the small people that's trying to integrate what they're learning from school and from media. Thank you, Radia. I really uh, I read the thing that you posted in our one group, and it really touched me actually. And to hear you speak now, that it can be so simple as well to see through what seems confusing. Let's get to work. Let's roll up our sleeves. Let's just do it from within, organize what we can, and then take responsibility over what's outside as well, happening in others. Uh, Anyone else would like to speak? Still have about 30 minutes or more, or 40, for those who would like to contribute to this color.
So,
Hi, Trudy.
hi, bye. Yeah, I don't know where to begin, how to frame this one. When you talked about like overproduction, the cynetic production, right? Okay, so maybe just relate my own experience recently. I went through a very intense experience over the weekend, and it was basically with Kundalini. So it's working on Kundalini yoga, and we went through a day of very intense exercises. And what I found after that was the following day, when I woke up, my mind was completely blank. There was no, it was just blank. I then realized that I couldn't recall words. So I'd be speaking and then I can't, I cannot, like a word doesn't come. And I can't figure out what it is. It's almost like you're speaking and then you stop in the middle of a sentence and then you really have to try and form another sentence, right? So it's sort of like it comes and goes. In some ways, I was trying to make sense out of it. So what you said just now about cynetic overproduction, kind of like maybe that's what's happening. I'm not quite sure, but I'm actually wondering, right, that so all I've done recently is just not do anything. I've just allowed myself to just try and meditate, be still, I suppose my question is, will my words come back?
Synapsing is how we linear out our relationship with the world around us. That's what synapses are for. If we don't need to synapse, then we don't need to unravel in time. We don't need to sequence our day. We don't need to make an action item. This is the first thing I'm gonna do, and then that's the last thing I'm gonna do. So we literally become babies. My advice in this is I think it's okay, especially for those who live in places like Singapore where people are so synapsed that literally as soon as they wake up to the moment that they're sleeping, they're going to be doing exactly the same sequence. They're going to ride the MRT, they're going to go to, I don't know, Orchard Road or Bugis Junction, and they have always the same steps. So there would be certain people who would have the need to overproduce because even though you're overproducing, you might be so synapsed that you would have to trust the unlearning process that won't take like a day or a week or a month. It might take even years to totally heal. So there's a need to be patient. I think what allows us to feel safe is because there is all this understanding that's coming to us now, not coming from universities, but in fact coming out of what we used to regard as mysticism, like a healing. Isn't that amazing that we have scientific ground to support the weirdness as well? So stay with it. I think it's good. I think it's okay. It actually partially makes me glad. So we need to have both sides to this as well. That it could be quite scary. It could lead to problems. But I think because we are holding this responsibly, like we're going into the weird awake, because we can go into the weird asleep, and then we could just keep on blowing our brains out. But as long as we're aware, even when we're losing ourselves, there's a part that's also being gained. So I think it's okay listening to where you're coming from because there's at least also a certain level of trust, even though you're also losing parts. Yeah. Thank you. Brent.
Just a minute. Battery's going flat. Yeah, the apoptosis, the learning and the unlearning, really, I really related to that. It really resonated. Just like last month, I was a lot of self-doubt coming on this course. I'm going, what have I learned? Like, what am I learning? Like, what am I studying? Like, and looking into it more, it I've sort of gone off on tangents. I'm learning from this course, like going into other, not on the course text, but more so on the just learning what's coming rather than trying to learn. So I guess my whole life, I probably grew up on the old rote learning, like repetitive learning, but it's never really stuck. I've never really learned from that. And it took a lot to learn, a lot of energy, a lot of disappointment too, like, you know, not being able to recall that in exams and really struggle in most of the exams I've sat in my life. So I really struggle in that learning process. So for me, I really had to look back at not so much the learning and unlearning, but the unlearning of my learning. How do I learn? And it's almost like just take no thought. Take no thought. If I understand it, I understand it. I don't need to map out the whole brain and point to this section of the brain's here and this section's here or name it. It's just take no thought. If I understand it, I get it. If I can give 100% attention to what I'm listening to, what someone's trying to teach me, then if I don't know it, but I take that attention in and feel it rather than try and work it out in the brain, then it's perhaps there to be untangled or to come out when I need to know it. When somebody comes into my life, an experience comes into my life, that the learning will come then, the meaning of that message at the time. So it's almost like this learning or this problem solving is entangling me into me and taking me away from the entanglement of the whole, like the big message, the problem is here in the whole, rather than the problem of the hole's in here. It's just like, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like whatever's entangled in here and gripping this one can only be entangled in seeing it in the whole. And whilst I see that entanglement or the problem in the whole, it's just no connection with the whole, because I'm trying to work out the problem and I get entangled within and it's like choking. So yeah, I've really just had to just accept what I know and accept what I don't know, and just don't hold on to the message. Don't carry that weight of trying to work it out. Just let it work out somehow, or let the knowledge come somehow when it needs to come. So yeah, it's very hard to explain a lot of this to me, like entanglement and untanglement. I can swap those sort of words around sometimes, but yeah, just by sitting back and going, no, you don't have to sit down and for hours and hours and try and get this, or step by step, just can get bits and pieces and let the next bit and piece come when it comes. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah. If I wasn't, for example, teaching or holding inner dance space, I wouldn't be studying as much. So I'm able to have a relationship with knowledge contained within the architecture of what's being done or what's being talked about, because it's active. So I'm not thinking of it for thinking's sake, like because I'm working in it within the inner dance process. knowledge for me is not about the outcome, it's about the process. Learning isn't about the facts, it's about the how the energy itself is learning. So when I look at the facts, it it matches with what is happening, so that there's a resonance. It's not just a so I think there needs to be something active, like later on. That's why a lot of people, they would co-facilitate with others. They would go into environments where there's something dynamic happening. So I think when the knowledge itself becomes not the process, and so it's okay, yeah, for sure, to just get the gist, like the big picture, to allow it to just wash over us. And maybe for some who aren't in the dynamic yet, the dynamic would be interpersonal. It's not just like interiorizing this within oneself. There's something about being with others in service and also in reflexivity that makes this kind of relevant. Then it's not about us anymore. It becomes the system itself working itself out. I think that's what we missed out in school, where there's a lack of seamless weaving between the theories, the philosophies, and the practice itself. So I think this would maybe direct us towards putting all these into like a lived experience, like bringing this out into the world somehow. If we end up like me, like there's this developmental pressure to when I speak, do I know what I'm talking about, or do I keep looping around really simplified concepts that people have heard over and over again in a non-structural way, so that when people do have actual questions about what they're experiencing, do I kind of regress with them over like wondering about like it's a spiral. I can just spiral in a simple way. It's good. That's good. But at the same time, when the questions arise, it's coming out of a real curiosity, a real sense of wonder, because something is growing, something's building a structure. So there has been a lot of interest in terms of, let's just like dive deep and get in touch with like everything in a way that just dances with each other, all these elements. And then there's this newfound interest in a lot of people who have been there over and over again, like building. So I think it would be good to now have space to just let these things grow, because we're not just learning from the year, we're learning from, having been here for a while already. It's good to now just like live and not definitely like what you're saying, not try hard. Like let's now just integrate together and simplify maybe our exposure to the knowledge, so that we're still learning, we're taking notes with each other, we're experiencing with each other with less of the pressure. I think we can enjoy this now, because we're not anymore having to plant the seeds. We had planted many seeds in the past, and we can reap the fruits of our labor. We can just receive the blessings that are on its way, because we already have gone into the acts of creation, coming from deep perception, coming from the trust. We should really just open up and say, I don't need to pray for my blessings. They are already on the way. Maybe they're actually there and I'm not seeing them because I'm still like in this scavenger hunt for all the pieces. But if we were to really embody the mandala, which is stating that everything I need is already like right here. So when we go into the learning process, that's like a ritual of emergence where I honor it, I value or also what is there, and when I balance out the growth and the regression, even as I learn, there's less of the struggle somehow. Easier said than done. If that was easy, then this would have been figured out by most. So the hardness of it is also part of the easiness. How to make the hard easy requires a certain mood, attitude, and it also comes from experience of having been at it. So I think us growing into this, it could just be like that. I think we already have what we need. Yet it wouldn't limit us, meaning if part of the at easiness would be I do deserve everything that I am. We can go into, okay, I would lessen, I would simplify, but there's a part of us that always know how big we are, and it is. And so I embrace also what is me. And in a way, if you got all of that right away, you couldn't, none of us could handle it. So we get maybe 0.01% more the next day. But in the scheme of things, in the real totality of what's in here and out there, we can only handle 0.01% at a time. How we would approach that resonantly is that 0.01% is also 1,000%. That 0.01% also holds the 1,000%. So if we can be okay with that, the part and the whole, then there's something that slows down somehow, that can live in time but hold like that much space. And I think we can do that. Like I'm myself, that's what I am demonstrating, at least to myself, that I can be in the intensities, I can be in that sense of overwhelm, but at the same time I can be grounded in it. And all I do is just a day at a time, you know, it's like an hour at a time, like a step at a time. But what my mind's learning is to hold many things at the same time, so I don't feel lost. That when I have to hold a part of the curriculum, a thematic for that day, I can still hold the others, but I'm not trying. It's just coming from all the experiences of putting myself in these situations where I am holding many parts, and then I'm able to hold one thing at a time as well. That took me years, but I'm really glad that I'm still here. I haven't exploded yet, and I'm happy to see that many people are headed towards that, are already able to do the same as well. So thank you for expressing not the destination, but you are in the journey, and you are in a space of enjoying it as well. Because though it is hard, it's also authentic, and a part of it does feel good. Because we're still here. Otherwise, why would we be here? You know? Thank you. Anyone else? Would be 10, 15, 20 minutes in case anyone else would like to contribute. We can close soon. I have to get back to day 7 of day 10. Just happening 3.5 hours now. Okay, I think we should be good. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to Indigo. Let's stay in this, draw out the maps and see how this reverberates. There was really a lot in this call that invites us to look at what is not cognitive dissonance, which is hiding, but what does it mean to see all truths as true? What does it mean to not invalidate any one thing, to be able to accept that even the things that don't seem right is still holding a part of the puzzle, right? Okay, so thank you and see you again soon. Namaste.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Big hug. Mhm.